Alright, let's begin. For this video, we're going to take a look at what methods did the Indian nationalist movement use to achieve independence. Starting with Gandhi and Satyagraha. Satyagraha literally translates as soul force. It's a specific Indian form of nonviolent resistance that's championed by Gandhi. It also includes the belief that ordinary people can bring about political change by using peaceful means to fight for justice. Other ways that he helped out, and were specific to him, he appealed to traditional Indian values. And so you've seen him many times in that he dresses and lives as a peasant in order to better connect to the masses. Early in his life, he dressed as a British lawyer, but as he adapts Satyagraha, he changes his style to appeal to the masses a bit more and connect to them better. He establishes an ashram, or community, which is committed to nonviolence and self-sufficiency. So he's got this little microcosm of his goal for India within his ashram, kind of his own goal, and he's doing exactly what he says when it comes to nonviolence and self-sufficiency and equality in this little community that he's built. He's going to focus on very specific groups, and mostly it's the downtrodden, it's the poor, it's those that need the help the most. And so tenant farmers that are exploited by landlords, industrial workers that are exploited by factory owners, poor farmers that are unable to pay taxes after a bad harvest. And so he's appealing to those that need help. And worldwide, this appeals. His campaign also includes non-cooperation with the British government, a boycott of British schools, universities, and even their courts, but also the Hortal, or economic boycott, of all British goods. And so here's Gandhi making his own thread to make his own cloth. Then here's a picture of Gandhi in, I believe, 1931 when he visits London, and it's well covered in a lot of the media. So more on the Satyagraha. Nonviolence was ideal for India, as armed resistance just wasn't going to work against the power of the British military. We saw how that worked out for the Sepoy Mutiny, and so they had to figure out another way to fight, but it's not going to be direct. And this also appeals to the rich, to the Indian elite, who feared that rebellion would lead to instability in the government and that radical groups could threaten their position in society. So they would not stay powerful, they wouldn't stay rich if it was violent. But this will work with the rich, it'll work with the poor, so eventually most people are going to go for nonviolence. Britain's greatest weakness wasn't their military, but their economic reliance on India, and so Gandhi saw that they could exploit that. Not just Gandhi, but many saw that they could exploit that. Something like a boycott of British goods is going to really hurt their ability to trade, and a strike would start to damage a lot of the British-owned companies, so even British owners could start to push the British government for change. Gandhi started to change the INC into a mass nationalist organization that was for everybody, that appealed to all classes. And he even goes for the untouchables and starts to approach them to bring them in. All ethnicities, all religions, even some of the major Muslim movements like the Caliphate movement is a major supporter. And so this was an early movement that gets a lot weaker in the 1920s. I'll talk more about that. Then going back, here we see that this becomes a bit of an issue in that they arrest Gandhi, but his followers are acting in the same vein, and England doesn't really know how to react to that, react to this unusual action of nonviolence, of civil disobedience, as opposed to the usual acting violently. England can deal with that. This is different. 1920, the INC supports Gandhi's campaign for non-cooperation. So he started on his own, but by 1920, he really is more influential with the INC, or Indian National Congress. This included a call for boycott and Swaraj, or self-government through legitimate and peaceful means. So they're going to do this slowly, peacefully. The British react, and they overreact by arresting 20,000 protesters, and this only causes further protesters and further arrests, and so they really get nowhere. The British, at least, India really gets their message out. The INC gets their message out. The protests started to turn violent, and so Gandhi decides, all right, we're done. This is a non-violent campaign. If you can't handle it, we stop. And so he goes into hunger strike to end the violent protests of the INC and some of the Muslim League. But Gandhi is still arrested afterwards and sentenced to 6 years in prison for sedition. After 2 years, he is released due to poor health because he's getting older, and the marching and fasting has aged him very quickly. After this, he withdraws from political activities, really kind of disappointed that his nonviolence turned violent. And so he withdraws until 1929 just to fast and meditate for his next steps. In the meantime, while he's out, he starts to call for smaller things, calling for a constructive program of local weavers and social programs to promote self-reliance. So he's more of a local level, working on self-sufficiency. He even fights for the rights of different classes like the untouchables. And this shows that his vision of a post-colonial India, a post-British India, would promote equality for all. And not everybody was okay with that. Even some within the INC were not ready for the rights of untouchables. And here's a little cartoon criticizing Gandhi from an American cartoon from 1947, where Gandhi's got all of his focus on India, but he's not realizing some of the confusion, chaos, and contradiction that is resulting from the non-violent protests. As he's focusing on one thing, other things are happening. The tensions continue to rise. Despite pushing for non-violence, there were problems. The early INC featured Hindu-Muslim unity. They were working together. The Khilafat leader Muhammad Ali served as INC president. There are many Muhammad Alis. I know it gets confusing. But the Khilafat was, the idea there was they really supported Turkey and the strength of Turkey as a Muslim power. But as Turkey got weaker, so did this movement. And so it kind of died out, leading to the rise of the Muslim League. Tensions really started to rise between Hindus and Muslims in the mid-20s, especially with Gandhi out of the picture. And we started to see this Hindutva appearing as a politicized form of Hinduism with an anti-Muslim message. It's a radical, militant, and at times violent Hinduism. Yeah. And a follower of this ideology would later on go on to assassinate Gandhi. And so we start to see this anti-Muslim message, this pro-Hinduism above all, the Hindus first as opposed to Indians first, really rise up in the 20s. And this results in the Muslim League getting a little stronger, especially with the fall of the Ottoman Empire after World War I. And so even other cases as far as the split. Muhammad Ali Jinnah, and so Jinnah is going to be the main way to split the different Muhammad Alis. Jinnah offered to work with the INC in exchange for protection of Muslims. So he wanted certain rights for Muslims, but the Hindu nationalists in the 1920s that were really promoting for a Hindu India, they reject the offer, and Jinnah goes off and he really strengthens his positions in the Muslim League instead. Some other conflicts, we had issues where most of the landlords were Hindu, while a lot of the Muslims were peasant farmers, so you've got this class battle going on as well. More communal tensions, more fights. 1927, Motilal Nehru drafted a constitution that called for dominion status and self-government, so it'd be a step forward. Dominion status, this would be something along the lines of what Canada has, where they're given pretty much complete independence up to a point, till they are still technically part of the British Empire, but they get their own full self-government, and the British Empire really doesn't have any say. This was proposed during the Simon Commission, as when the English sent over Simon to talk about reform. They said, nope, we're ready, let's go. How about some dominion status? And when that didn't go through, some of the radical members started to push further. And so radical INC members like Jawaharlal Nehru called for full independence. They wanted to go, not Canada, but more American style, complete break. Jinnah and the Muslim League started to call for separate representation to protect their position as a minority. So they're pushing closer and closer to they call for a separate nation of Pakistan. 1928, the Communist Party starts to rise up too, and they start to promote student protests and worker strikes and really disrupt the economy even further. And the UK reacts by charging a lot of the 31 union leaders with planning to overthrow the government. Trials later on found them innocent, but we do see other groups becoming more radical because the English just aren't moving fast enough. So Dominion status was a chance, they didn't take it. So they're going for independence, and the communists are even starting to show up too. In 1929, Gandhi comes back. He makes his big comeback. He returns to support full independence, also known as Purna Swaraj. These slow UK reforms, nothing coming out of the Simon Commission. This pushes the INC to say, okay, it's time for more radical demands. Just English rights are not enough. We want full independence. It's time. And so Gandhi makes his big comeback with the Saltmarsh. This is his second major campaign. The first campaign ended violently, so he took a break. Well, why salt? Salt was heavily taxed by the UK, and the UK held a state monopoly. So they were the only ones allowed to make salt. They were the only ones allowed to sell salt. And in a hot environment, salt's absolutely necessary to survive. You need salt, you need water to survive. And they are starting to tax some of these essential things. And so he chose this simple thing to send out a clear message, that Indian survival should not depend on the British. They can take care of themselves. So he makes his march, 241 miles to the coast. So he goes from the ashram all the way to the coast to make salt at Dandi. He arrives at the sea, picks up a lump of natural salt, and by doing that, he has now broken the law. And this is a long march. It's over 24 days. Thousands are following him. Mostly they just follow him for a couple miles and just kind of follow him in the local city. And they do about 10 miles a day. UK does not react. They figure this is just a small thing, but it grows. And the media coverage makes this huge. And the press coverage results in more people breaking the salt laws. So if they thought it was just going to be Gandhi being symbolic, they let it go. But now everybody's doing it. Now everybody wants to be part of this movement. And average citizens are making and selling their own salt, breaking these salt laws. So Gandhi is arrested, and this prompts strikes and rioting throughout the cities. 100,000 are arrested. 100 are killed by the police in these riots against the arrest of Gandhi. And so after that, after these massive riots, UK decides, okay, let's try a meeting. Let's negotiate. INC says, nope, not time to negotiate. How about independence? But Gandhi gives it a shot. So Gandhi is released from jail by the Viceroy and goes for the negotiating. Gandhi calls off his civil disobedience campaign during the negotiations. The UK, in exchange, starts to recognize the development of the Indian manufacturing economy, that they're going to start to be able to make their own things, their own cloth. And so this gives them more rights and allows them to produce more. Gandhi is greeted in England by crowds of very supportive workers that have been reading the newspapers and understand that he's fighting for the little guy. And so the little people of England really understand that. Gandhi is invited to a second round of talks in London, but again, not much change. It's this very, very slow reform. And so because little change is happening, he decides, nope, it's time to bring back the civil disobedience. And so it's back on. 1932, Gandhi is arrested again, leading to more resistance because he keeps talking out against the British government, so the British just keep on arresting him. The peasants started to refuse to pay their taxes, and they started to support the boycott even further of British goods. 80,000 arrested this time. Again, the Brits just are not getting their message across. But they're going to try to split up the movement with the communal award by giving separate electorates to religious minorities. And so the Muslims will have a guaranteed section of Congress, Sikhs will have a guaranteed section of Congress, even untouchables, so they're doing it by class too. Untouchables will be guaranteed seats in Congress or Parliament. The INC and the Muslim League see this as an attempt to further divide the nationalist cause. They're kind of seeing through this attempt to kind of just give the people a little thing to get them to shut up and help to divide them further. And so Gandhi, in jail again, he threatens to fast to death this time. And so he makes a deal with the leader of the Untouchables to reject these electorates in exchange for more reserve seats. INC rejects Gandhi working with the untouchables, but he doesn't care. Gandhi does what he wants. And here's a little picture of Gandhi from Civ, and he's telling me to take a break. So I'm going to take a break.